This new great katana called Dragon Hunter is so good that I had to make a build with it right away. And with the 8 weapon classes added to Shadow of the Erdtree, the Great Katana class offers a unique perspective to the combat arsenal, with it being a hybrid between a greatsword and a katana. 90% of enemies I fought so far stood zero chance, and I'm not only talking about the skill it has called Dragon Wound Slash, a leaping attack launching a projectile that pierces through multiple foes, dealing blood loss buildup. Despite that, here's what's unique about the weapon itself. Because it's a great katana, and the attack speed is much better than a great sword or a colossal sword, while retaining the great sword's ability to stagger enemies left and right with its basic attack. So with a combination of its range and swift strikes, you can pretty much stun lock most enemies. Just look at how I absolutely destroyed the Fire Knight Queen line when he made the mistake of invading me. And this was before the Dragon Hunter was even leveled up. Check this out. Every time he tried to attack, I interrupted with a combo of my own. By the way, after I kill him, there will be an awesome talisman right here called the Crusade Insignia. This raises your attack power by 15% after killing an enemy. It's the perfect talisman for fighting multiple foes. I'll get into my talismans a little bit later on in the build and everything else. But first, let me quickly tell you how to obtain the Dragon Hunter Great Katana. And you're in luck because you can get this as soon as you spawn into the new map. Me, personally, I like to explore every nook and cranny of the Elden Ring maps whenever I get one, diving all the way in to see what goodies I can find. And as I cross this bridge, you gotta be careful because they're gonna be shooting at you. And then headed to the right, I noticed these dragon bone statues with no heads, which eventually led me to a dungeon called the Dragon's Pit. The enemies are very OP here, so I wouldn't recommend trying to fight them. Just run past them until you make your way to this cliff. Jump down, and don't worry because you won't die. It actually leads you to the boss named Dragon Man. He's basically a guardian of dragons. There's some lore behind that I read, but it's pretty dope. And once you kill him, it'll grant you as a reward the Dragon Hunter Great Katana. And I was so hyped about this, I went back up into the cave and tried to find those OP enemies and see how it felt. And to be honest, at first it was underwhelming and I felt disappointed. Well, that's because you gotta go upgrade this thing to the max level. And lucky for me, I had tons of smithing stones left over from the original game in my inventory, just ready to use. So I headed back to the blacksmith and made it happen. Now, it's scaled up to C, which is pretty good because as I said before in my other video, every weapon doesn't have to be an S tier. Like you have staves and certain mage weapons that are usually S tier, right? But it doesn't mean if a weapon is not S tier, it's not awesome. Usually, weapons that get a C in scaling or B in scaling, they have something else going for it, like Corpse Piler. It doesn't scale up to S. That's because the skill that it has is amazing, and the blood loss buildup, the combos you can inflict, it's just an amazing weapon. And when speaking about the Great Katana, that skill is very good. I was using it on a Divine Beast Dancing Lion, and man, like, he has unpredictable attacks, okay? But when I use my skill, it's great for zoning, and you can use it at the perfect time to deal the damage that you need. So even though I leveled it up all the way, the weapon scaling was up to a C. And it scales in strength and dexterity. And after I leveled it up, boy oh boy, nobody stands a chance. Remember that cursed bladed enemy that jumps around? The first enemy that you see as soon as you spawn into the map, where he just inflicts blood loss and throws things at you, flips around, grabs you. He does all kind of things, but I pretty much shut him down. He couldn't really do anything to me, so I think I'm going to be using this weapon for a while. Anyways, here's how it scales. Strength and dexterity. So this also meant that I had to go back to Renalia and respect my character stats appropriately. I focused primarily on strength, dexterity, endurance, and arcane. And you don't have to worry about vitality that much. It's good around 40. You don't need any intelligence or any faith, none of that. All you need are the stats that you see right here, because the talismans that I'm using are helping out with my vitality and with my FP, like the mind, what you utilize when you use your skills. And you're going to be using this skill a lot. The Dragon Wound Slash is really good because you can either charge it or just use it quickly. When you use it quickly, it doesn't really The projectile doesn't really go that far. It's just a good way to use it fast when you need to. But the charge attack is where you want to go. And when you do utilize the charge attack, it uses up a certain amount of your FP, which is why I have the talisman called Sarian Filigreed Crest. And this lowers the FP cost of skills by 25%. You could see the difference in this so much. And this is a good strategy to utilize when you have low FP. You don't have that much to spare. Use this so that you can use it as if you had the FP. Like, I usually like to have mine at around 30. That's a good spot to be. It enables me to use most of the summons that I have. And the summon that I'm using right now doesn't even require FP. It requires health. I'm using the Mimic tier. This summons a mimic of your character. So whatever you're wearing at the moment is what the mimic is going to spawn as. It has the same amount of health, the same amount of damage that it deals. So it's great for this. When I was fighting that dancing lion, he was distracting him and using the Dragon Wound Slash as I was using it from behind, and I ended up stunning him several times. And the way that you stun enemies is by increasing your critical damage. Critical damage is very important. And I have another talisman called the Dagger Talisman. You don't have to be using a dagger in order to utilize this buff. Critical damage is increased by 17%. That's a pretty penny. And the critical damage I deal with this katana is a lot. Every time I do the Dragon Wound Slash, that's critical. Whenever I perform a guard counter, that's considered critical. Speaking of guard counters, that's my other talisman. I have the curved sword talisman. That's the thing. You don't have to have that weapon type in order to retain these buffs. And what this does, it increases the damage that you deal when you perform a guard counter by 20%. And that's the great thing about this weapon as well. It has some insane range, so you could pretty much be successful with a lot of your guard counters. And finally, this is to help with my formidability since I don't have as much vitality, as much health. The Dragon Crest Shield Talisman. Now, there are 3 types of these. There's the regular one, the +1, and a +2. I have been fortunate enough to get the +2. I got this a long time ago, and honestly, I don't even remember where I got it. I could probably go look at some old videos to see how, but this reduces your physical damage taken by either 10, 13, or 17%. And that's what I was telling you about. The first one is 10, the second one is 13, and the one that I have, +2, is 17% physical damage reduction. Now, you know there are a lot of damages in the game. You got lightning, ice, all kinds, but this protects you from regular physical damage. And when I'm not using these 4 talisman is when I utilize that one I was telling you about that I got, the Crusade Insignia. Because when you're fighting a boss, unless they have ads, you're not really going to be killing enemies, so you don't want to use this talisman when you're fighting bosses. But when you're not, you swap one of those out for the insignia. You can choose which one because I think all of these are awesome, honestly. So dexterity, strength, endurance. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, this weapon has 55% blood loss buildup, so you're going to get that hemorrhage every now and then, which is pretty dope too. And the arcane that I have helps out with the blood loss buildup and the potency of the bleed. I don't need as much as I would with, like, let's say the Reduvia dagger or something else. This is more focused on dexterity and strength because here's the thing. I'm using for defense the Eclipse Crest shield. Man, this thing is still goated, even though I got this years ago. This shield is perfect. I don't like using the fingerprint stone shield because it has its own skill wherein when you use that shield, you can't use your weapons skill or Ash of War. So the Eclipse Crest shield allows me to use whatever skills I want to with the weapons that I'm using. And so dexterity mixed with strength and endurance allows you to hold on to this shield because it's classed as a great shield. You can be on the brink of becoming encumbered or having a heavy load. Personally, I like to have medium armor on because I have my mobility and I can block pretty much anything, which means the playstyle that I adopt is a mixture between mobility and blocking. Because if I'm not able to block, then I'll dodge roll out of most situations. And the Dragon Hunter sword, it has like a stab maneuver. When you evade roll, you could stab enemies and it has great range. So I see a lot of other build types or talismans that you can utilize with this weapon to create other builds. And when you have dexterity and strength, you can really maneuver how you want to when it comes to defense and mobility. One more thing. The secondary that I use is the curved sword. You can use any weapon you want to, honestly, but the whole point of this is so that I can switch to this whenever I want to use this for ads or dealing damage at range without really taking much risk. The Ash of War that I'm using on this weapon is called the Flames of Red Manes, and you basically throw out a projectile of fire out in front of you at a distance. And this thing is so strong because this Ash of War scales with strength as well. So you're going to be stunning people left and right with this thing. And it just deals so much damage. I've been using Flames of Redmanes for a while, and it just so happened to go with this playstyle completely. This is the first weapon that I found so far within the new class of weapons. I can't wait to find the light greatsword or the martial arts style. I'm just getting started, and I wanted to present this build to you because I was so excited about it. So let me know what you think about it down below in the comment section. I hope I didn't miss anything. Let me know if I did. Like the video if you like this build, and also subscribe if you're new here. I'll see you in the next one. Be right out.